This is the story of how I spent 3 days attempting to catch my dog running away on video, and how I succeeded. This is my dog Ruger. She's a mix between a Belgian Malinois and a German Shepherd. She's a great dog, but she can be extremely mischievous. We have a really big fenced-in yard for her to run around in, but from time to time she will find a hole in the fence and get out. Usually whenever this happens, we just find the hole and patch it up. But in December of last year, she started to get out every single day, and for the life of me, I could not figure out how she was doing it. So I devised a plan. At first, it involved a very complicated GPS tracking unit hooked up to a cellular phone plan with a SIM card, but after some quick Googling, I found the idea to not only be expensive, but also less accurate than I had originally hoped. So eventually, I landed on this. This is an action camera, a Chinese knockoff of the much more recognized GoPro. I found this while going through an old box of electronics I had lying around. I believe I had originally bought it for filming underwater, but I think it was also used on a remote control plane. Whatever my original intent for buying this camera, I figured it might work as a solution to this situation. My idea was to somehow mount this camera on Ruger, hit record, and find out how she was getting out. Normally when you want to mount a camera on a dog, you use a harness. I didn't have one. They are relatively inexpensive to get online, but when you have a 3D printer sitting 5 feet away from your bed, it's kind of hard to justify ordering anything online before you at least try to make it yourself. So I measured the dimensions of her collar and sketched up this model in Fusion 360. I got a little lucky because the first design fit perfectly. Next, I inserted an SD card, hit record, and let her loose. And after a few hours, she came back, I retrieved the footage and found out exactly where she was getting out. I'm sorry, if only it was that easy. The first problem was getting the camera angle right. When she was running around, it worked fine, but whenever she would bend her head down, all you would see is glorious 4K footage of the ground. Except it wasn't actually 4K, I downscaled it to 720p so I could fit more hours of footage on the card. Anyway, this was pretty easy to fix just by angling the camera farther forward, so when she bends down it looks forward and we can see more of the environment around her. After that short setback, I was finally ready to start collecting data. But as it turns out, because of limitations of my camera's battery, I can only record for about 4 hours, even though my SD card can hold about 6 hours worth of footage. So on the first day, she actually did escape and I was like, oh great, now we have the footage, only to find out that the camera had turned off before she had escaped. So my plan for now was just to continue this cycle of letting her out, letting the camera die, then reviewing the footage, and hoping that one time she would get out while the camera was still on. So that's exactly what I did. Again, and again, and again. For the next 5 or 6 times, she would get out, but the camera would always die before she did. I almost at this point thought she was waiting to hear the beep of the camera dying before making her escape. And honestly, I would not put that past her. And the annoying thing was that I didn't immediately know whether or not I had gotten the shot. Instead, every time I retrieved the footage, I had to sit down and watch 4 hours of my dog living out her daily life. And while learning her day-to-day schedule was interesting, it was not the purpose of this experiment. Then on the 3rd day of testing, I brought in the footage and it looked a little different. As I was scrubbing through it, I was noticing the ground didn't look quite the same as the other footage. And then it happened on this section. This is a part of my woods that is outside the fenced-in area. That means that she had finally gotten out. And what did she decide to do with her newfound freedom? Apparently this. But the suspense really started building as I started to backtrack from this point in the footage to where she had gotten out. And that's when I found this. think our gate would have been one of the first places we would have checked, and in fact we had seen her squeeze through the gate before, but since then we had tightened the motor quite a bit so that the gate would clamp down against the post much harder, and we thought she wouldn't be able to do it. Well, apparently with the right motivation, i.e. squirrels, she was able to squeeze through. While this footage was surprising, it was also quite relieving because I thought it was pretty obvious how to fix it. Now with that extra board, she has no gap to stick her paw through to pry open the gate. So Operation Canine Containment was a complete success, and while it took a couple tries to get the footage we wanted, it was also very interesting seeing how she spent the rest of her time. If you want to try this yourself and put a camera on your own dog, I would highly suggest getting a harness and not trying to 3D print a mount. While it did work, the camera was pretty shaky and unstable, and a harness would probably fix that. Save yourself the trouble and just order a cheap harness online. Let me know down in the comments if you found this story interesting, and I will see you guys in the next video. I'm Josiah, thanks for watching. But can I put it on a cat?